Hello everybody, CritCrab here with a follow-up story. This is the final story about the one called R. If you haven't already, definitely do watch the previous two videos I made about them, linked in the description. Anyways, roll post. So, at the end of the last story, R was going to finally be arrested for his actions, including forgery, randomly lying to authority figures, blaming his forgery on an innocent man, and ruining his life and business, and then just generally being a dumbass. However, this is a campaign with dimension walking, and the way that ability is triggered is when a person hits their most despaired moment, which the DM decided this was. The plane R warped to was a kind of hell plane. It was a place where the big evil god of the campaign resides, and the people there all live in suffering, with the natives' only ambitions being to serve the evil god and the other various gods of their world. The way they wish to serve is that they have to prove their worth, which is through this ritualistic trial system ruled over by the most minor god. The trials I don't know about because the people going through them are only through the first one. R was warping to join the other team in our campaign because this campaign has like 9 people, so it was split in half early on. We were just going to do different things on the starting plane, and the DM's plan was to have different dimensional planes, and the ability to walk through them was to be a big twist. But their team got into huge hijinks, and one of them guessed the twist based off whatever the DM is basing this lore on. So they kind of left early and have been hopping around. They had arrived in the Hell Plane recently and were just about to start the trial when R dropped in to just join their squad. Obviously they know R, so they weren't ecstatic, but generally we all find it fun to shit on R, and he's never actually gotten our characters killed. The first trial they had to do was that the god shot a giant arrow into a massive forest, and teams of people going through the trials had to find their way through the forest to it, beating any dragons, other teams, and the Anointed. Anointed are people who failed in the trials, died, and were brought to special temples that are part of this world's religion. They're zombies with, presumably, no memories or free will who exist to work for the trials. They try to fight any newcomers to the trials, and it's their eternal job to clean up between trials. The second trial was going to be bigger. Apparently, all of the characters would have to face their greatest fear. So for some characters, this would mean a tangible thing, like fighting a monster they almost died to. To others, it would have been a more ambiguous thing, like someone whose fear is failure is going to find out their entire character's motivation is almost guaranteed to fail. This sounded like fun because that meant R would finally have to face some sort of consequences. Because even in character, his biggest fear could justifiably be considered having to live up to your actions. So this sounded like it was going to be a super fun session. R never made it to the second trial. Yesterday was our scheduled day for sessions in both campaigns. The team my character is on goes first and lasts about 2 to 3 hours. Then after that, the team R is joining would go. This is all done over Discord so people can listen in or just join for their campaign. However, the DM's shoulder was killing him, like to the point where he almost hadn't slept the night before and wasn't sure all day if there would even be a session. Ultimately, he decided he just didn't want to do real sessions because he didn't want to have to use his right arm on D20. And we all were fine with just doing quicker sessions today as filler. So in my group session, we just peacefully went to our town and chatted with some NPCs about the next thing we would do. No biggie. R's new team decided that they needed to be ready for any possible threats. So after a short shopping spree, they decided to spar with each other. R was sparring against a guy whose character is named Belmont. Belmont is this weird kung fu build all about avoiding damage and blah blah blah. I'm new to Genesis and haven't read all the combat books. R's combat method in-game is a great sword that he lights on fire. So they fight and R gets f***ing destroyed to the point of taking 7 critical wounds. For those of you who haven't played Genesis, you take a critical wound whenever you go over your pain threshold, or weapons can do crits if you roll high enough. When you take a crit, you roll a D100 with whatever number corresponding to an injury that will make your life worse. like increased difficulty in your next move or being stunned or whatever. But more important for this story is that critical injuries stack. So for your first crit, you just roll a d100, but for your next one, you roll a d100 and add 10 to the result. And you add 10 more for every critical injury. The 1 to 100 crit injuries are all pretty bad, but after you go above that, you start getting into stuff like dismemberment. And over 150 is just straight death, so you probably see where this is going. R spars with Belmont for a while and ultimately loses, taking those 7 crits, and with the final attack, Belmont finally rolls high enough to cause death. But it's all good, because Belmont had some talent or attribute on his weapon that allowed him to purposefully miss a killing blow. So R is safe and sound, and everything turned out fine. Except R then decided, oh, you know what? I think I can go for another round of sparring, but with someone even stronger than Belmont. Yes, seriously, he decides to spar against another member of the party's character, Asuman, who is a hulking behemoth with an axe for an arm that he got after fighting the strongest warrior of another plane to a standstill and earned his respect. R does chug down a potion or two to restore his hit points, but that doesn't do anything about the critical injuries, which will stack and will impede on his combat checks. So yeah, R's death is not in glorious combat like he wanted, and it wasn't in an old folks home or a jail cell like everyone else wanted. The idiot just dies in a friendly sparring match after Asuman rolls high enough to go over R's wound threshold and then rolls 84 plus 70. R somehow managed to find the single possible death that wouldn't make anyone happy about it. I joined the Discord call in the middle of their fight and they were sounding so casual. I had just assumed their session was over and they were just doing a pretend fight to see which of their character builds would win. Thankfully, R did get some sort of final punishment. An NPC native of this plane watched it happen, understanding that accidents in sparring happen, but just tells the party that they can bring R's body to a temple so it can get a proper disposal in this realm. And that means being made into an Anointed. R's body forever just being used to clean up battlefields and serve as a weak encounter for adventurers. And on one final note, R asked if his next character, who would be in my group because the two parties trade R every time his character dies, if his next character can be the grandson of this one. He was told no. End post. Honestly, call me a nitpick, but there are a few elements of this story that kind of throw me off of the R-hate bandwagon. For one, he doesn't seem to do one bad thing worthy of ridicule throughout this entire story. The past few? Sure, but this? I mean, the dude was just sparring. If I was DMing, I wouldn't make it have any permanent negative consequences. Just let the players roleplay while PvPing in a nice, low-pressure setting. The adventure hadn't even begun and his character got grounded into a paste. Now that I mention it, near the end of the story, he probably wanted to kill off his character. His character's abilities were irredeemably shot, and he knew already that the rest of the group wouldn't hold anything back anyways. And correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't remember anyone throughout this entire video trilogy actually sitting down and talking with him about it. All in all, R seems like he's kind of clueless as to how this all works, and he needs to acclimate to play TRPGs better. And the people who should be helping him along are instead watching him fail and getting needlessly frustrated. No, I'm not saying that either R or his group are bad people or role players, but there's definitely a lot of needless dysfunction. Anyways, if you enjoyed this video, please do leave a like and subscribe to the channel for more stories just like this one. Till next time.